Welcome to another episode of Cannabis Talk with your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zebo. A cannabis-related talk show or opinion podcast with a little bit of a transcendental twist. Happy preemptive 420 salutations. It's 4:09 Pacific time, and I'm free for the rest of the afternoon to hang about and indulge in my silly podcast projects. So here we go. Don't forget, kids, please comply with the law as much as possible. For those of you who've never heard it, this is ragtime something. This is Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin. I was going to say Janis Joplin for a second. That's what tripped me up. I was like, no, it's not Janis. It's her great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy, Scott. One of the most old school of American, top 40 tracks. Bring it on home, Mr. Joplin. Booyah! Hi, friends. Thanks for joining me. I know it's a stressful world out there. There's a lot of crazy shit going on. There's a lot of crazy people getting away with a lot of that crazy shit going on. And I understand that my little podcast may or may not be the most urgent thing on the planet. Or rather, on people's minds. But for those of you, whoever is out there actually listening, because I honestly don't know. But I'm on Sprecher.com. If I go to my profile, I got 296 plays, which has been a slow, gentle increase over time. And I don't know if that's just one person who tunes in every once in a while and catches up on whatever podcast episodes. If it's just that one person, then bless your heart. Thank you for listening. I don't think that's 296 people that have listened. But we'll click on more stats and see what comes up there. I haven't looked at that in a long time either. At the same time, also over on YouTube, where I'm going to archive, because I think YouTube lets me keep more content longer than Sprecher does, unfortunately. Because Sprecher's trying to milk you for a higher subscription fee. Anyways, not that to critique, it's a great business model, blah, blah, blah. On YouTube, on my channel, which I don't have enough followership, I've had 449 views, which is cool. That's gone up since the last time I checked. Not a lot, obviously, but it's gone up. I have 0 followers. I have 1 like on Sprecher. I closed YouTube already. But that's neither here nor there, really. Because we're here now. Whoever you are, listening, maybe 10 years in the future. Oh, God forbid it take 10 years for people to catch on. That would be a harsh slog to sit through. So, cannabis. Talking about it. 413. You know what I miss? I miss... cannabis for me always has been, should be, ought to be, always will be a social thing. Tragically, at this time, I don't have a lot of cannabis enthusiast friends in my immediate vicinity. Something I need to rectify at a personal level. But I digress. I don't know how many years ago, sitting around in someone's living room enjoying a bit of grass, the thought occurred to us, between the two of us, sort of a collaborative development, that we, and by the end of it, after discussing it for a while, we were convinced that this would work. We thought, we were convinced that we had just solved, or figured out a way to solve the world's conflicts. And that conversation, which most likely happened in Ventura, with one of my Ventura friends, probably my roommate at the time, or one of the friends that we had in common. That conversation wound up being one of the seminal inspirations for the character I'm creating and the book series that I'm slowly trying to map out and write. The notion of gathering the world's leaders in a room and just getting them really, really, really high together, and then getting them all to talk and really listen. That's hard. That's the hardest thing you can do to a group of people who've never been high together, and then suddenly they're all high, is sort of synchronizing their energies so that they can actually listen and be heard. But the reason we thought that was a good idea, besides and above and beyond the fact that we were just really high, and therefore, it was like kind of a magical idea that came out of nowhere. I think that we presented evidence for it as being a very sound thesis, given how many times we've sat with a group that ultimately managed to get along just fine, despite any kind of, jarring disagreement, because we just packed another bowl and passed it around. What does that say about people who smoke pot? That's an old joke, actually. I don't forget what comedian, but they've been working that angle that, just spray weed smoke everywhere and everyone would chill out, because you never see two stoners getting so worked up that they get into a fist fight over something, right? Like they might get a little worked up and enthusiastically debate a notion, but ultimately they'll get sidebarred, giggle about something, get the munchies, go to 7-Eleven, come back and forget what they were talking about, hug and take a nap. It's the evolution of this chain of ideas has led me, after many years of contemplation, mind you, led me to believe that I think one of the contributions I would like to make in the coming decade to cannabis culture is a real, genuine, cannabis shamanism counseling. And I don't know where to start with that, because, if I try to think of that in normal, everyday, real-life terms, I don't think I have the patience to go get a marriage counselor's license. That'll probably take way too much time and money that I don't have. But I feel I have the spiritual and energy understanding and comprehension, and the cannabis experience, and the meditation experience and understanding, to be able to sit in a room with a married couple or a pair of married couples who really want counseling. Ooh, it's 4:19, you guys. You got a minute? That's what we used to say when we realized. Booyah! God bless America. God, amen, and God bless America. Not necessarily that God as described by people who believe in that God, or this America as these politicians trying to turn into this America that we see now. But God bless America, good and hard. Right in the vagina. Because America's a woman, right? And God's a man? Boom. Okay, sorry, was that too far? Was that controversial enough to get me noticed by the mainstream, or by the alt-centrists? Where are all the, I guess there aren't any spiritual millennials, huh? I mean, all the spiritual folks petered out, got their spirit on, and already did their thing. No, I don't know. They're all over the place. So, cannabis. It's fun. It's great. It's healing. Science is getting there. It's more than that, in my opinion. And slowly but surely, society is going to go through a period of having to come to terms with that sort of stuff. Like my crazy idea about a counselor. Like, why would that work? Well, why does any kind of intervention work? You have a thoughtful, compassionate, patient, individual that's focused their intent on trying to bridge the gap between two people that are experiencing conflict. And though some people in my family life might doubt that I'm capable of this, I've actually been called to do this many a time. The thing is, all of us are imperfect, and I have often failed to behave or to utilize this skill set in family conversations or encounters, because I'm a human and I'm flawed. And family script is hard to get over. You know what I mean? Like, you learn these knee-jerk responses, and it's hard to catch yourself. But it's easier to see when the more self-aware you become, the easier it is to help others, because it becomes obvious in others. So I think it's fascinating that our postmodern society runs us ragged, trying to dictate or teach us how to be ourselves, but how to conform simultaneously. Does that make sense? So postmodern society wears us down. And it's fascinating how we seem to have little recourse and little training in how to compassionately help each other rejuvenate or reconnect or ground or, do all these simple things that are good for you, that have been around for millennia, and that for whatever reason haven't been cataloged by mainstream medical science. Gee, I wonder why. They can't patent and profit on them, probably. But that some bit of research does have a tendency of indicating has potential for being very restorative and very curative. But that's the oppressors trying to keep us down, man. You know, like we've been fighting this hemp revolution, not cannabis, but its sister hemp, for decades now. And while we keep making strides, you know, a couple steps forward, it gets a couple steps drawn back. But we really could. There's all this hemming and hawing about green energy, and like we could destroy the oil company if state by state, maybe with a little bit of leadership in California, could decriminalize hemp, reestablish it as a respected and, you know, well thought of trading commodity, building commodity resource, and started replacing our addiction to oil-based products with hemp-based products, which are a 100% better for our health as human beings and the environment of the health. The health of our environment as a planet and as the only place where human beings know they can survive. And along that same sort of thinking, we should be reinvesting. Okay, so states that have recreational weed now, you're raking in billions of dollars. Please direct some of those surplus funds into that suggestion I just made, that others have been making. And also simultaneously, like along the same sort of thinking, into scientific research of better and more efficient ways to cultivate healthy, organic, non-GMO, pesticide-ridden cannabis strains for specific and organic and holistic medicinal use. Because I think while we've made great strides in that since the original groundbreaking work that it took to bring about Charlotte's Web for that young girl that was having all the seizures by the name of Charlotte, and that legal fight to let them, to be allowed to do the research and do the human testing so that she could have a strain of cannabis that would render cannabis oil that would keep her body from having, you know, an overwhelming number of episodes of seizures a day. We need more research like that and beyond. As I've talked about before in other episodes or in other segments, part of my overall arcing theory is that one of our problems today is that cannabis used to be a massive part of our diet because it's yummy, it's full of nutrition, it's super green food if you eat it, and it's medicine, and it's healing, and it's meditative assistant or a meditation booster, however you want to call it, a meditation facilitator. It has all these amazing properties or qualities that can have or enact these really wonderful, really great impacts on our bodies and our minds, and arguably that therefore our souls, our energies. It's no wonder that they've fought such a crazy, outlandish, heavy-handed war against it. Continue to do so. Because the bias remains. It's painfully obvious here in California. If you look around, there are hotspots of progressive growth and other areas where like-minded, entrepreneurial Southern Californians have been beaten down by local biased civic organization, by local government. We decriminalized it or rendered it recreationally legal statewide, but left a lot of leeway in the way that the proposition was worded and in the way the resulting legislation will be worded to give each city and each county lots of leeway in how they zone and put pressure on the businesses that crop up. And if you look around the landscape, you can see places where even the humblest of and most honest and most above board and most transparent of cannabis-related businesses gets pushed out because of the negative and often erroneous stereotypes associated with what kind of after effects might manifest if you have a cannabis-related business in your community. And yet other communities have Nordstrom-esque dispensaries and are raking in billions of dollars of revenue, or will be raking in billions of dollars of revenue over the next couple of years. So we need some reorganization there, and some kind, compassionate, social discourse that is aimed at opening people's minds a little bit about it, which is, of course, my one of my objectives in having in running a blunt, honest, direct podcast about cannabis by a cannabis enthusiast of some experience. And I want it to be clear that the cannabis culture at large has a lot of problems and flaws kind of worked into it that we need to take a good hard look at. And there's got a lot of negative stereotypes associated to it that are not real, that are not true, that we as a whole, as a society, a whole society of cannabis users and not cannabis users, we need to take a look at. And it's got a lot of benefits. Cannabis as a nutritional supplement and as a psychological nutritional supplement, as a spiritual nutritional supplement, as a medicine, has potential to truly bring people together, help them break down the barriers that are preventing their communication, help them heal each other's trauma that either one might, or that they each caused each other. I think that there's the deeper, more valuable business opportunities in the near future ought to be in those higher order sort of services, instead of just selling more weed at higher intensity levels. And for example, one of the things we still need to address as a community, as a whole, is that we need to own up to the fact that during the medicinal cannabis period of our history, there was a lot of abuse of law. Okay? Bending the rules, breaking the rules outright, being shady as fuck. Because money is money and greed is greed. And cannabis is easy to sell. It really is. People will buy it from you. And we have to, wrap our brains around whether or not we really need to hyper-regulate this plant. And that begs a deeper question. Do we need to monetize, commercialize, profiteerize this food, this plant, this weed, this maybe it's too late, right? It's too late. We've gone too far. It already is. It already has been. And it's much better to bring the black market out from underground and turn it into a legitimate, trustworthy. But as we do that, let us not let the social injustice that has reigned supreme on our brothers and sisters who were basically just aggressive entrepreneurs and people of color, who many of whom still are rotting away, locked up in jail for doing what is now going to become a massive multi-billion-dollar industry in which, God forbid, it isn't a bunch of rich white kids that become richer white kids because of it. You know what I'm saying? People don't look at me and think that's a person of color, but I don't look at myself and think here's a white guy. And so for me, this issue goes deeper than my love and affinity for cannabis as a spiritual level. I may sound white to most of y'all, but I'm Mexican. And if you take a good hard look at the history of cannabis and the political propaganda and brainwashing around cannabis, it has almost always been tied to and anchored in or about the derogatory verbal abuse of Mexicans, blaming the Mexicans or Latin Americans at large, the Hispanics. So there's an issue there, and in more contemporary terms, our black skinned brothers from Africa. And it is not lost on me that probably to some degree I have enjoyed some accidental extension of the benefits of white privilege, because I do, quite obviously, at first glance, pass beyond passing for a white guy. And very few Mexicans look at me and think Mexican. Very few white people look at me and think Mexican. And I'm not trying to make this whole episode about that, but I'm just saying, let us not forget about the social injustice to our fellow Americans, our American brothers and sisters of different origins that can be categorized or labeled or identified as people of color that have suffered disproportionately at the hands of the law for the possession, the transportation, the consumption, the growth, and the sale and purchasing of cannabis. It's why I was trying to talk about that in the previous episode. It's why one of the reasons why I am quite proud of the work that the Friends of Prop 64, of which I am a friend of, the Friends of Prop 64, I'm a friend of theirs. It's a group. Literally, that's the name of the group, right? Friends of Prop 64. To include language in the legislation, in the proposal of the draft legislation, for being brought to vote by the proposition for the remedying of some of the most egregious of the social injustices, people in jail for minor possession, and other things like that. Especially if the wave of the future is to turn it into the next high-end, lucrative, self-sustaining business that could quite literally save the world. So there's a bigger step, right? So not to keep sounding like I'm repeating myself. The next big step that everybody and anybody who has either joined or been for a long time a member of the cannabis community, and we cannot lose sight of, and that's a federal level decriminalization. And to get really technical and really nerdy, it's really important that this be not ignored. Not because I'm saying it, but because it shouldn't be skipped or avoided or dismissed at the federal level. We need to recognize that when it was classified, when cannabis was classified as a Schedule I narcotic, that was a lie. And that it should not be there in the government's top tier of most dangerously addictive narcotic pharmaceutical drugs, because it is neither a narcotic nor a pharmaceutical drug. See what I'm saying? It's a plant that grows out of the ground and does not have narcotic properties. So it cannot be a Class 1A pharmaceutical narcotic. At least either my understanding of all the classification system is incorrect, or the pedagogy and the propaganda around it is what's misleading people or confusing people. and cannabis is not dangerous. It is a gift sent to us from God. Tobacco is dangerous and highly toxic. And yet, that's so normal that we still, sell it at every street corner. I'm repeating myself from yesterday's podcast. It's so hard not to, right? But if you are a member of the cannabis community, if you are a friend of Prop 64, if you are someone who does not understand what is in Prop 64, if you are someone who is afraid of Prop 64, drop me a line, post me a message, hit me up on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, although I really loathe logging onto Twitter. I say that every time. And let's elevate this discussion. And what's more important to me personally is, as we move forward, let's really be careful. Like I was going on and on about yesterday. Let's really be careful about what we normalize in cannabis culture. Because I don't want to sound like a prude or a wet towel or a buzzkill, but there are some things that we do not want to normalize that have in in niche segments of the overall cannabis, pro-cannabis community, have been somewhat normal. Things that are kind of ridiculous. Some of it's not even worth getting into, because then you just kind of go round and round in circles. But it really boils down to choosing intelligently and being really significantly clear about one's intent. So, having said all of that, I want to stop and pause for a moment to put in a plug or a shameless self-promotion moment and say that I want to actively reach out to anyone in the pro-cannabis community that would be interested in being a one-time guest, a repeating guest, a panel discussion and a phone interview or Skype interview, or a co-host online or in person, because I really feel very strongly that there's a lot more to talk about in this area, but that me rambling about it, whether I'm prepared or not, can get a little tedious and self sort of recursive, because I've got the same beats, and I'm a much better co-host when I have a co-host that isn't a missing in action co-host, someone physically here to talk to and talk with and be talked at. Okay, so enough of that. A fellow cannabis enthusiast would be a keen choice. Cannabis intelligence. Wow, I can pronounce better than that. Intelligent, well-spoken cannabis enthusiasts with a sense of humor and an eagerness to talk, and try to become public figures in terms of contributing to some of the thought landscape of this burgeoning, emerging culture. Apply here. Get involved. When we want to talk, I want to hear from you. All right. Having said that, and still have 11 minutes to go on this particular segment. Oh, and I don't have anything propped open. I totally thought I had a thing set. I thought it might be cute and interesting to turn to the interwebs. That may or may not be efficient now. What's the next funny, cute thing that makes sense and that I think I can talk about? Nothing. Everybody's posts suddenly are all really mostly mundane and about their personal life. I'm not entirely sure. And none of it is appropriate. Okay, never mind you. Screw you, Facebook. Not having something that pops out that can be really fun and cannabis related right now. But yeah, cannabis and hemp's going to save the world, folks. Quite literally. Especially if it's true. I've heard this repeatedly, but I don't know for a fact. And I'm not going to go type it up right now. You can if you want. You can go Google this. But I've heard it said, bandied about, and posted on, or about, that cannabis apparently is one of the few plants or crops that has the natural inclination for improving the quality of soil instead of degrading it to the extreme level that it apparently can reduce the amount of radioactivity in irradiated farmland. I don't know if that's real or not. I don't know. But if it is, we should be planting cannabis and hemp everywhere, like just carpeting the planet with it. If it can purify the world as well as all that. Wouldn't that be nice? If we could have, if there was just a plant that could grow anywhere under almost any condition and just grow like crazy and provide us with a superfood that's super nutritious and can sustain us even when there's not much else going on worth eating. And also, give us a pleasant, bodily, spiritual, phenomenological experience that's the opposite of getting drunk, which is what I argue getting high is. Getting drunk is going down the ego trap spiral of toxic sort of entertainment. You're entertaining yourself in a toxic way and deriving pleasure from destroying your own body. And cannabis, you're sort of doing the opposite. It is enhancing and healing your body in its subsystems, and then that feels really good, especially when you've been deprived of it. It's overwhelmingly good, which is why many people smoke pot and enjoy a delicious nap right away, especially if they have what is interpreted as a low tolerance for it. And why others who have a lifelong relationship with it smoke pot and don't seem affected by it at all, but still love it and render no opinion of like having lost its value, even though they don't seem to experience any kind of behaviorally modifying effects. And it's not because of they have that is perceived as having a high functioning tolerance, and but I don't something about the phenomena, my experience of the phenomena, and my comprehension of endless hours of discussion with other people who engage in consuming pot. I don't think that that's what the case is. I could be wrong. I totally could be wrong. I understand that. But one of the sad facts of the matter is right now is we don't have enough trustworthy and reliable science that was either heavy-handedly trying to tip the scales against cannabis because it was being funded by anti-cannabis interests like tobacco or oil or pharmacology, etc., 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 or is just sort of scatterbrained and erratic because it doesn't know what it's looking for, because it's sort of just, it's dealing with the limitations of the anti-cannabis inclined federal system it makes it really hard to do any science around cannabis. So there's not a lot of interesting, next level science asking next level questions being done. And that's what I want. I applaud the continuing movement of expanding the decriminalization of cannabis state by state. Let's knock it down like we did same-sex marriage and gay rights. Let's get that approved at the federal level by getting the states to at each state to sort of have that discussion internally and make a decision about it and let the people speak. And then let's not waste the opportunity. All that tax money. So much science. I'm pretty sure that there is fertile ground in the intersection between spiritual practices like deep meditative practices, astral projection practices, etc., healing, like energy practices like Reiki. I've had one or two personal experiences up that alley that I've withheld from sharing. I have not taken a deep dive into that alley of personal experience because I know how easy it is to dismiss those kind of anecdotal stories as crazy or as fabrications. But I have been both on the receiving end and on the giving end of sort of spiritual healings that happened without pretentious setup or without commercial context. Stranger to stranger or acquaintance to acquaintance, because of the arising need for spiritual energetic healing. And I'll probably save those stories for another time because we're down to our last 4 minutes and almost 20 seconds. It's 4:35. But I will tell you this. I am a firm believer. Ding. Oh, not yet. I lied. I thought I saw 4:20. But it is now 4:20 seconds. Ding. Left. Where's my bell? I forgot to bring it back. There's fertile ground to investigate there, folks. Because I propose a thesis that should be tested. I think that when a human being meditates, meditation helps liberate the mind. I think that when a human being consumes cannabis in one of 3 different ways, or ideally in all 3 different ways, smoking it, drinking it, and eating it raw, I think that that human being experiences a deep, in uplifting enhancement to their sensory apparatus, and that those 2 things converge, and that the meditation process and when combined with the sort of heightened efficiency or heightened intensity by which we can perceive things when we have a fully activated endocannabinoid system, charged with cannabinoids. I think there's a there, as the saying goes, and that there's a worthiness of investigation. There's a almost, dare I say, a moral duty or responsibility to investigate that more overtly, more directly, more clearly, and for the benefit of mankind, verify or debunk and then get it out there if it's true. Get people meditating with and get people healing themselves and giving what's the word? Nutrifying? No. Not feeding themselves, but again, feeding themselves with cannabis. Okay, dang. It's my time is essentially up, folks. Thanks for hearing me out. Thanks for not judging me if you disagree. If you agree, then by all means share with your friends. Encourage them to check it out. And also, step up to that plate of behavioral role modeling to all those young people that are now going to grow up with cannabis as something that's available out in the open, as opposed to, a dark sort of occult, underground rebellious thing. Because, they are going to need guidance. We need to be thoughtful and realistic and positive as we move forward. So peace, love, and grooviness be with you. And don't smoke and drive, folks. And pass it to the left-hand side. Share. And be good human beings to each other. May peace, love, and grooviness be with you.